Welcome to Arsenal, where the weapons and war machines of military history come to life. Today, we explore the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber in global strike missions after the Cold War, and the crews and opponents who gave it its reputation. If you enjoy learning how technology, tactics, and human decisions come together in combat, you can find more articles, podcasts, and resources at trackpads.com. High above the Atlantic at night, the cockpit sits in a pool of soft instrument light. Outside the windows, the sky is almost perfectly black, with only a faint green wash from the heads-up display tracing the leading edge of a flying wing. Two pilots ride forward in the B-2 Spirit, strapped into ejection seats and trading checklist items in low, even voices as their bomber crosses another invisible line of longitude toward Europe. Arsenal is the Friday feature of Dispatch, U.S. Military History magazine. The scene is calm, but every step they take moves them closer to hostile airspace. They left Missouri hours ago, climbing away from home through tankers and navigation waypoints. The target they are heading for lies in the Balkans, inside one of the densest belts of surface-to-air missiles and radar coverage on the continent. For other aircraft, this would mean large support packages and obvious preparations. For the B-2, the plan is different. The crew is counting on shape, coatings, and careful routing to slip into that air defense network and still arrive on time. On their screens, the route appears as a thin line that threads between threat rings and known radar sites. In reality, the airplane is carving its own path through hostile airspace, riding a flight profile tuned to make it as hard to see as possible. Its serrated trailing edge, blended wing shape, and radar-absorbent coatings all work together to keep enemy sensors guessing. Tanker tracks and earlier waypoints are behind them now and out of mind. The jet has gone quiet and lean, cruising in a narrow band of altitude and speed where its shape and systems are hardest to detect. Far below, the scattered lights of towns and airfields flicker through breaks in the overcast. Somewhere in that darkness, radar operators and missile crews are on duty, waiting for an alarm that says something large and fast has slipped through their net. Inside the cockpit, the B-2 crew works through final weapons checks, confirming that Global Positioning System, GPS, guided bombs are aligned and ready. Their job tonight is to knock out hardened command sites and air defenses in the opening phase of a wider air campaign. This single airplane is about to hit first from thousands of miles away and deliver the combat debut of a bomber designed for a very different war. The B-2 Spirit began as an answer to a nuclear age problem, the question of how to send a manned bomber deep into the heart of a superpower's territory when that airspace is ringed by modern defenses. By the later stages of the Cold War, older bombers like the B-52 and swing-wing strike aircraft could no longer count on flying high and straight toward their targets and surviving. Opposing air defenses had grown into a layered system, with over-the-horizon radars, long-range surface-to-air missiles, and interceptors guided by ground controllers. Simply adding more speed or more electronic jammers could not solve the basic issue. The traditional bomber profile had become too easy to track. Strategy planners still wanted what a bomber could do that missiles could not. A bomber could be recalled after launch if the situation changed, or retasked in flight to new targets, and it could carry a mix of weapons on a single mission. It could show presence and resolve without firing a shot, yet still deliver devastating force if ordered to attack. The problem was survivability inside those dense defenses. Even low-level penetration tactics, where crews skimmed terrain to avoid radar, were becoming less effective as sensors improved and the number of defended sites expanded. The United States Air Force needed an aircraft that could slip into this environment, hit multiple hardened targets, and come back out again without presenting the radar signature of a traditional bomber. At the same time, political and budget pressures demanded that any new bomber be more than a single-mission nuclear platform. Leaders were already looking beyond the immediate superpower standoff toward regional crises and conventional wars, where precision strikes against air defenses, command bunkers, and infrastructure would matter just as much as nuclear deterrence. The solution would have to blend cutting-edge stealth shaping, advanced materials, and long-range performance into a design that could carry heavy payloads while appearing on enemy radars as little more than background noise. That requirement pushed designers away from conventional fuselages and tails. It steered them back to a revived, refined idea from aviation history, the flying wing, now rebuilt with the knowledge and tools of a new era. That design leap from conventional bombers back to the flying wing set the stage for the program that would become the B-2 Spirit. To see how that idea turned into an operational aircraft, the story moves from strategy rooms to drawing boards, wind tunnels, and hangars. The B-2 Spirit grew out of a secret effort to build an advanced technology bomber that could meet harsh Cold War nuclear planning demands. Designers at Northrop, later Northrop Grumman, returned to flying wing concepts their company had explored decades earlier, this time with new tools. Computer-aided design, advanced composite materials, and a far deeper understanding of radar physics changed what was possible. The basic trade-off was stark. A conventional bomber shape made it easier to house crew, fuel, and weapons, but it created a very large radar target. A pure flying wing with smooth curves and blended edges promised a far smaller radar cross-section, but it made stability, control, and maintainability much more complex. Engineers had to design an airplane that would naturally want to wobble and correct that tendency entirely through computers and control surfaces. That meant trusting digital flight control systems in a nuclear-capable bomber. It was a bold step. The payoff would be an aircraft that could carry the payload of a heavy bomber while presenting radar reflections closer to those of a much smaller aircraft. Inside the design community, debates focused on how much speed and altitude the new bomber really needed compared to how much emphasis to put on stealth. Earlier generations of strike aircraft had chased supersonic dash capability and very high-altitude cruise. For the B-2, planners chose a different path. They accepted subsonic cruise and focused on low observability and range. In effect, they traded peak speed for the ability to be seen later or not at all. To protect its radar signature, the B-2 carries weapons inside the wing instead of on external pylons. Internal bomb bays preserve the aircraft's clean exterior lines. Engine inlets are carefully buried in the upper surface of the wing and use curved or serpentine passages to hide spinning fan blades from radar. Those blades are usually bright reflectors. On the B-2, they are tucked away. The result is an aircraft whose outline, angles, and surfaces are tuned first to avoid detection and only second to resemble a traditional airplane. At a glance, the B-2 Spirit is a long-range, subsonic, flying-wing stealth bomber built for the United States Air Force. It serves primarily with the bomber force based in the continental United States. A typical crew is 2 pilots seated side by side in the front of the center section. Its main capability is to deliver a large internal payload of nuclear or conventional weapons over intercontinental distances without refueling. With tanker support, its reach extends even farther. In service, it evolved from a niche nuclear asset into a flexible global strike platform that can launch from home soil, hit targets across an ocean in the opening hours of a campaign, and return without relying on forward bases. Walking around a B-2 Spirit on the ramp, what stands out first is what is missing. There is no distinct fuselage, no tail, and no vertical fin. Instead, the aircraft presents a broad swept wing with a serrated trailing edge and smoothly blended surfaces. The cockpit sits near the front of the center section, reached by a crew ladder. Under the skin, the wing is packed with fuel tanks, structural spars, and systems, all wrapped in layers of specialized materials and coatings that help scatter or absorb radar energy. The 4 buried engines breathe through inlets on the upper surface of the wing, keeping their hot exhaust and spinning compressor faces shielded from most ground-based radars. This protects one of the brightest radar reflectors on a normal jet. Inside, the cockpit feels more like that of a modern transport or airliner than a cramped fighter. 2 pilots sit side by side, each with primary flight instruments, displays, and controls. They share the workload on missions that can last well over a dozen hours, trading legs for flying, managing navigation, talking to tankers, and configuring weapons. Behind the seats are rest facilities and storage space that recognize how long a B-2 sortie can be. The mission computer systems knit together navigation data, sensors, terrain information, and weapons management. They reduce the number of individual switches and dials the crew must tend. The aim is to let the pilots focus on flying the planned route, staying within the stealth envelope, and making decisions about target timing and weapon release, rather than wrestling with dozens of separate subsystems. Long missions demand that kind of support. Beneath the wing, large internal bomb bays carry the aircraft's payload. Rotary launchers, or racks, can be configured for a mix of weapons, from traditional gravity bombs to precision-guided munitions designed to penetrate hardened structures. Keeping these stores inside the wing maintains the bomber's stealth profile and reduces drag. It also shapes how crews on the ground do their work. Maintainers and weapons loaders operate largely under the aircraft and inside the bays, often at night, to prepare it for a mission. They deal with the realities of delicate coatings, precise panel fit, and the need to keep the outer mold line as clean and undisturbed as possible. From the crew's perspective in flight, the B-2 behaves like a highly automated, carefully managed heavy aircraft. Complex flight control computers constantly adjust control surfaces along the trailing edge to keep the inherently unstable flying wing in balance. Pilots feel a stable platform rather than a twitchy experimental machine. That is entirely by design. In training, they rehearse long-range strike profiles, aerial refueling at night, and precision arrivals over simulated targets. The cockpit has to serve as office, bunker, and home for an entire day's work in the air, and the combination of technology and ergonomics supports that demand. All of it serves the central mission of getting a stealth bomber and its payload to the right place at the right time with as little warning to the enemy as possible. That careful blend of design and crew comfort mattered most when the B-2 Spirit finally went to war. The long mission profiles that had been rehearsed in peacetime became real flights across oceans into live air defenses. The first true test came in 1999 over the Balkans, when B-2 crews joined the opening strikes of the air campaign over Kosovo. Spirits launched from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, crossed the Atlantic, and slipped into heavily defended European airspace to drop precision-guided munitions on Serbian targets in the first hours of the operation. Each mission was both a combat sortie and a proof of concept. The aircraft had been conceived for nuclear penetration deep into a superpower's territory. Now it was delivering conventional weapons against hardened air defenses on another continent in a single continuous sortie. In that campaign, B-2 bombers were assigned to critical infrastructure, command bunkers, and integrated air defense nodes that could not easily be suppressed by other aircraft in the very first wave. Crews relied on global positioning system-guided weapons to hit multiple aim points on a single pass, laying precise impacts across a complex target set. The combination of stealthy approach and precision munitions meant that a small number of aircraft could produce effects out of proportion to their numbers. For planners, the B-2 quickly became a scalpel. It could open corridors and knock down key sites so that other aircraft could follow with less risk. Later operations over Afghanistan and Iraq reinforced this pattern and pushed the aircraft even harder. B-2 Spirits again launched from home soil or from distant forward bases, sometimes flying missions that stretched beyond 30 hours. They struck airfields, communication centers, and hardened shelters early in each campaign, creating gaps in the enemy's ability to respond. After those opening blows, they shifted towards supporting troop movements and coordinating more closely with other assets. The bomber never operated alone. It worked as part of a larger web of tankers, intelligence platforms, and conventional fighters and bombers. Its particular niche was to arrive unannounced, drop many precision weapons in a single run, and depart without triggering a thick wave of missile launches. From the people who fly it, maintain it, and plan missions around it, the B-2 Spirit earns high marks for doing what it was built to do. Its greatest strength is the blend of stealth and reach. That combination allows it to threaten targets deep inside defended territory without demanding a large escort package of fighters and jamming aircraft. Commanders prize the flexibility of launching from bases in the continental United States, changing targets in flight if needed, and hitting multiple points in a single sortie with precision-guided munitions. For aircrews, the aircraft is a stable, well-instrumented platform that feels in some ways like a long-range transport rather than a temperamental prototype. The same features that make the B-2 effective in combat also create challenges on the ground. Its stealth depends on meticulous upkeep. Specialized coatings, very tight panel alignment, and carefully managed access points make the aircraft more demanding for maintainers than a conventional metal-skinned bomber. Turnaround times can be longer, especially when coatings need inspection or repair. Operating the Spirit requires dedicated facilities, including climate-controlled shelters and support equipment, along with a trained cadre of technicians familiar with its unique materials and systems. The small size of the fleet magnifies these issues because any single aircraft out of service represents a noticeable fraction of total available capability. Cost is a constant theme in the B-2 story. The bomber was expensive to develop and build, and it remains costly to operate and sustain. That reality has always limited the number of airframes and shaped how and when they are used, often as high-value assets reserved for missions where their unique qualities matter most. Potential adversaries have paid close attention, adjusting air defense tactics and technology in an effort to narrow the window in which stealth bombers can operate with relative freedom. Modern sensors and networked systems have eroded some of the advantages the aircraft enjoyed in its early years. Even so, the ability of the B-2 to complicate an adversary's defensive planning and to deliver concentrated precision effects early in a campaign remains at the heart of its value. Unlike many fighters and attack aircraft that grow long trees of variants, the B-2 Spirit exists as a small, relatively uniform fleet. There are no radically different export versions or distinct marks spread across several air forces. Its evolution has instead come through steady upgrades to avionics, defensive systems, navigation gear, and weapons integration. Early in its life, the bomber focused heavily on nuclear missions. Over time, modifications shifted its emphasis toward conventional precision strike while preserving its strategic deterrent role. That shift reflects changes in the security environment and in how leaders intend to use long-range bombers. Software and sensor improvements have steadily expanded the aircraft's ability to carry and deliver newer generations of guided munitions. Updates to communication and data link systems have improved how the B-2 fits into a modern networked battle space, allowing better coordination with other aircraft, ground controllers, and command centers. Defensive system upgrades respond to the ongoing contest between stealth platforms and advancing radar and infrared sensors with the goal of keeping the bomber survivable against fresh threats. Most of these changes do not alter the bomber's outward appearance. They represent instead a continuous effort to keep a small fleet relevant against evolving air defenses. Behind the scenes, structural and reliability upgrades address the basic fact that these aircraft have been flying for decades. Strengthening key components, updating cockpit displays, and revising maintenance procedures all help extend their service life. At the level of doctrine, the rise of a future long-range bomber program has begun to shape how planners think about the B-2 and where it fits. In that sense, the Spirit's most important variant may not be a new model at all. It may be the way its missions and tactics establish patterns for the stealth bombers that follow. The legacy of the B-2 Spirit lies as much in the strategic thinking it changed as in the individual missions it has flown. It proved that a stealth bomber based at home could still deliver timely effects anywhere on the globe. It showed that surprise and precision could substitute for sheer numbers of aircraft in the opening days of a campaign. Its influence can be seen in the design philosophy of later stealth aircraft and in the emphasis modern planners place on penetrating, networked strike platforms rather than large formations of non-stealth bombers. It quietly reshaped expectations for what a bomber could be. For most people, the B-2 is encountered at a distance, during air shows and ceremonial flyovers, where its distinctive silhouette draws attention even from those who do not follow aviation. A handful of aircraft appear in museum settings and static displays at bases, allowing visitors to appreciate the scale and subtlety of its shape up close. Photographic and video coverage from exercises and operations offers deeper views of the bomber on the ground and in the air. Ramp shots highlight its smooth contours, while cockpit footage and mission documentaries hint at what life is like on a day-long sortie. Within the broader world of dispatch and trackpads, the B-2 Spirit connects naturally to other stories. It sits alongside beyond-the-call features that describe special operations and precision strikes carried out under its protective umbrella. It appears in living history conversations where veterans talk about the demands of long-range missions and modern air campaigns. Other arsenal pieces on earlier bombers and contemporary fighters help place it on a continuum of design and doctrine, from the high-altitude raids of earlier wars to today's networked strikes. Together, they show how ideas about air power evolve over time. That narrative continues beyond the written page. Narrated versions of Arsenal features bring these machines and their crews to listeners as well as readers, placing the B-2 Spirit and its story within the wider Trackpads podcast feeds and Dispatch audio editions. In every format, the reminder is the same. Behind every advanced aircraft, behind every flying wing or fighter silhouette, are crews and opponents whose lives turned on how well the hardware performed when it mattered most.